Emergency service dispatchers. What is the scariest call you have ever gotten? One of the first calls I ever took. Woman calls up and asks about the process of filing a restraining order. She discusses how her boyfriend has been abusive and controlling. Mid-conversation the doorbell rings. She puts me on hold, opens the door, and I hear yelling. Guy barges in and starts beating on her, and I'm sitting there helpless listening. Because I didn't have her address yet. Luckily, I did have her name, and within a few minutes we got her address and got help to her. She was pretty badly injured but lived. And he is still in jail. That call made me doubt myself and if I was in the right profession. But I stuck with it, and it has been a very rewarding, though sometimes sad, profession. One that always sticks with me is the guy who phoned to tell me he'd shot himself in the head. He was slurring his words and sounded drunk. But no. He'd actually shot himself in the head and was dead by the time the crew got there. That was a weird one to get my head around. I also took a call from a 15-year-old kid who came home from school to find his dad hanging. So I had to basically ask him if he was cold. Could he cut him down? All the usual while this poor kid was panicking to hell. And then the kid stops answering my questions. And the dispatcher next to me gets the emergency call from the neighbors saying they don't know what's going on. But there's a kid standing in the street just screaming. I think about that poor kid a lot. And I absolutely detest his father for doing that to him. When he knew his son would be the one who'd find him. Probably the other one that stands out is a call from the woman who'd just been violated. She'd been coming home from a club. And someone had pushed through her door behind her as she unlocked it. When he left, she called me. I still remember the way she screamed when she heard knocking on her door again. And I had to yell at her to try to make her understand it was the police. And not the guy coming back. I didn't sleep well after that night shift at all. My kid sister got a call last year from her best friend when he came home from school and found his dad unconscious and bleeding out in the tub. I'm incredibly proud of her because she walked him through putting pressure on the wounds and keeping his dad warm while she was also on another phone to the paramedics. Then when the paramedics arrived, she told her friend to make sure the back door was unlocked, and she went over and cleaned up the blood so the kid and his mum didn't have to deal with it. Caller, muffled voice. Me. I can't understand you. What's the location of the emergency? Caller, sounding clearer, like Kermit the Frog gives address. I'm going to hang myself. Me. Sir. We can help you. Talk to me. What's been happening? Caller, I just want you to move my body before my family get back. Me, please. There's nothing that can't be. Crack undefined gargling undefined silence. I had to stay on the line until I heard police on scene. He had a hands-free kit on. I wasn't even allowed 5-minute break. I had a breakdown after. I can't describe those sounds. Haunts me to this day. I cannot describe a feeling of being so intimately involved in the moment of such a traumatic death. He gave his pain to me. I work for a sheriff's office and a good friend of mine was a dispatcher. I stepped outside one day for a smoke and my buddy was standing there shaking and crying. I asked him what was wrong and he told me that he had just dispatched a call for his best friend. His friend was a former army sniper and had only been out for a few months. He was a volunteer firefighter and was responding to a house fire. Rolled the truck. And had been decapitated. Guy had 5 young daughters. Was a 911 operator for 10 years. Scariest is probably different than worst. My scariest was an active shooter in a high rise. Just sitting on the line trying to give the best direction so everyone makes it out okay. From the last time I answered this. A woman called. Screaming her head off. That she had driven into a body of water. Her car was filling up with water. She couldn't open the door. She didn't know where she was. Etc. Kids in the car. We're all going to die. Meanwhile I'm like, oh, what the F do I do now? Try to find out details about where she is. We know she can see a massive shopping center, but it could be anywhere even remotely close to that. Local units all fan out to the different large pond streams etc. It could be. Call the Coast Guard and Marine Support units to help. Try to find out what kind of body of water it is. How big it is etc. And she is just too panicked to answer any questions whatsoever. Managed to get the registration of her vehicle and that was it. Turned out she had driven into a flooded road, flooded from rain. Not anywhere near an actual body of water. Absolutely zero danger of the water going past her knees. Or 3-year-old was at a campground with her family and they let her out of their sight for 20 seconds and she wandered down to a creek and drowned. Her mom found her and her father called in. While I was getting details from the understandably distraught father, a random guy camping there was doing CPR managed to resuscitate her. I can't imagine how her parents felt. But it was like physical weight being lifted off of me. My sister works as a dispatcher. Her first week on the job, she had a man call in, saying he was going to kill himself. He told her that she couldn't do anything to change his mind. He was simply trying to let her know where he could be found. She heard the gunshot through the call. Second one. She had a little girl call in because her dad was unresponsive. She knew that CPR would likely save this man. But the daughter wasn't grown enough and didn't have the strength to perform it effectively. My sister had to tell her to leave the room. Because the longer that girl stayed in there trying fruitlessly to save her father, the more scarred she would become by the experience of watching her father die. Not a dispatcher but a paramedic. But a man called, saying his mom had severe chest pains. So we head over to their address in a hurry. However, there was no mom. Just the caller waiting for us and then robbing us at gunpoint saying they were going to kill us. He just wanted the dogs. But was quite shocking still. Always going through my mind when entering some shady neighborhood. I think the most genuine terror comes from child callers. I had this 5-year-old call in that her dad was growling and wouldn't wake up. Okay, agonal breathing. Probably a heart attack, scrambling to get a confirmed address for M's. PD dispatched to unconfirmed address. Finally confirmed the address and start giving directions on CPR. Nope, she will not touch him because she is scared, then bursts into tears. Luckily PD arrived just after she refused and they were able to do CPR until M's arrived. 911 dispatcher here for a large city. I get a little bit of everything and mostly it's BS. But one that stuck with me was something recently. A man called in frantic and it was really hard to get him to calm down. He told me his 35-year-old girlfriend was unresponsive and not breathing. I immediately started giving this guy CPR instructions and he kept screaming, I'm sorry my love. Tough morning for the guy, no doubt. It hit me that he could have been responsible or the last thing he ever said to her was not pleasant. Never followed up on the call. In this line of work, it's on to the next one. Too busy to think about it. I have millions of people depending on me not to let the last call affect the next one. I don't know what happened other than she was a DOA. Didn't hit me until the next day. My god. That scream was deafening. All I know is there was more to the story. I could hear it in his voice. Peace. I've heard people shot in real time. Parents trying to revive their dead kids first thing in the morning. But this for some reason hit me. Not a dispatcher but one told me that one time he got a call from a 19-year-old girl. It was late and she was new to driving, in the US. Her car slipped on black ice and went over the bridge. Her car sank in the river and she called 911 and he received it. He tried to keep her calm. Poor girl was an au pair from same country in Africa. She was crying because she was going to die in a foreign country and to make things worse she didn't even know where she was. They couldn't find her fast enough. The dispatch even remembers her last words, tell my sister I'm sorry I left. This story haunts me to this day. I'm also an au pair. I worked as a jailer for a while after getting out of the Marines. We had a dispatcher who had 2 kids. Both boys, one a pose that was always in jail, the other younger, troubled and riding a dangerous line. She got the call one night that her younger son got shot twice in a dog deal gone wrong at a public park where he was playing ball. He was dead before the helicopter got in the air most likely. The dispatch center was connected to the jail where she had to work less than 50 yards from the man who shot her son. She was pretty tore up. Call came in and was flagged as a frequent in a very rural county. The dude was just screaming. We couldn't make out anything he was saying but we had his address and sent every available unit we had. After a while the screaming started to die down and his breathing got very labored. He wouldn't talk to us but he just kept muttering. After a few minutes we realized he was praying. Few minutes later deputy arrived on scene. Heard him check in on scene and also heard him on the line. First noise I heard was him vomiting. Turned out the dude had been working on his car and the lift collapsed. The guy wasn't under the car but was between it and a tree when the car started rolling. He was impaled on a branch and pinned between the tree and car. Dude lived. He's a quadriplegic but he's alive. First legit 911 call he ever made and everyone took their sweet time getting there because it was usually nonsense.